Carnegies and the Mellons and all of the industrialists during the Industrial Revolution. All it was gimme, 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 and they forgot about their staff and the people who were working with them. And my first responsibility, we had 4 stores at the time, and I don't really remember how many people we had on in the staff, but we were organized by the Retail Clerks Union. We had a store in Raleigh, a store in Whitehaven and Poplar Perkins and Union Avenue. And my dad approached me and he said, you know, you've got this fancy education. You've convinced us to open these 3 stores. Now we've got this union problem. You solve it. And don't lose. Your job is at stake. And I think he meant it. I really think he meant it. And, you know, I looked at where we were, and we deserved to lose. We absolutely deserved it. We had barely minimum wage people. We had no benefits. We changed schedules willfully. We weren't really real straight with the overtime pay, and we were cutting every corner we could. So I had to go hire a lawyer, which was somewhat interesting because you could get somebody to represent you that was really hard-nosed and said, this is the way we're going to do it, and if we get pickets, we get pickets. And in the retail business, that just didn't sit well with me. So we hired a gentleman by the name of Sam Weintraub, whose son is still in the business. Sam is deceased. And he was a soft approach guy. And first thing he did was he went in and he took a little poll, and 95% of our staff was going to vote for the union. And I said, Sam, what in the hell are we going to do? And he said, we're not going to do anything. Not going to do one single thing. We're going to let them do their thing. You're going to get, excuse my language, you're going to get really pissed off because they're going to say some horrible things about you. They're going to say some horrible things about your dad, but you're going to have to take it. And I said, okay. The day of the election, we went to each one of the stores. We cut it so close that the union had no opportunity to rebut what we said. And what we said was very simple. We were wrong. We treated you poorly. Give us a chance. If we don't perform and we don't do what we're supposed to do and treat you right, you can have another election and we won't oppose you. And from that minute on, we became, our culture changed that minute when our people said, okay, we trust you. And from that moment on, the culture of our company became one of open and honest communications, one of teamwork, one of no politics, no bureaucracy, no monkey business. We had a shared vision. We had the theory of empowering all of our people. By then, we probably had 60 department heads. And we were in the process of developing a strategy, and we had this culture of what we wanted. Good ethics, customer service, everything challenged, everybody participating. But how did we pull all that together in a strategy to help us implement a strategy? Because we were going to grow. We weren't going to be another Kroger because they were nationwide. We weren't going to be another Walmart. Developing our vision was critical. So we hired a professor from the University of North Carolina and brought him in here, and we created the Seessel's Academy, so to speak. And from his tutelage, we developed a vision statement, which I have brought if you guys want to take a look at it. It took us a year to develop this because we involved all of our management team. They in turn involved everybody that worked with them. So by the time we got through, we had the input from over 1,000 people of what our vision statement was going to be and how we were going to implement it and how it was going to become a gospel. And after a year, after this vision statement was put together and published, it worked. It was just unbelievable. And we kept this gentleman, this professor from North Carolina, on board for several years. And he came into Memphis 4 times a year, had the academy, we had all of our management team. It was a very provocative, exhausting 2 days. Their charge was to go back to their team members and try to take that culture to them and then to get feedback. So the goal was to have everybody involved in making decisions. So you know, when I watch television, I see these athletes talk about my team and I did this. LeBron James is a really good example. I did this. Well, hell, I'd put him out there and let him play 1-on-5 and see how good he is. Because it's not LeBron James, it's not I, it's we. And that's what we tried our damnedest to do. How did we do it? When we started, I guess I said 1,000, we probably had 800, a team of 800. In the late 90s, we expanded. We had 10 stores. We had 2 manufacturing operations. We had a wholesale operation and an administrative operation. We had 2,000 people working with us. How in the heck could we make that work with 2,000 people, and especially when you consider the turnover that you have with part-timers? And some of the things we did were direct steals from FedEx. I was lucky I knew Fred. And from AutoZone, because I knew Pitt Hyde. We all grew up together. We did some crazy damn things. We had a cheer. We started every meeting with a cheer. And we made everybody stand up and clap their hands and wake themselves up and get involved. We had all kinds of recognition things for, it was called Way to Go, and if somebody in one of the stores did something exceptional, they were recognized at a Way to Go luncheon, and we gave them a pin. We had newsletters, birthday celebrations, we had a annual recognition dinner for everybody who's been with us for 10 years or more. And at that recognition, my brother and myself and the other members of, in quote, senior management, we gave everybody who was being recognized a gag gift that sort of emulated some of the things that they had done that were entertaining and funny. And then, of course, we gave them their watch or whatever else. And it was a hard ticket to get. And as it turned out, the last 3 or 4 years we did it, 80% of our staff had been with us 10 years or more, full-time staff. So it was a very rewarding experience, and I guess you could say our culture and our vision statement worked. But it had very, very limiting factors. We could never grow outside the city of Memphis because of our management style. We were hands-on. We were open 7 days a week, effectively 24 hours a day, and we were in the stores Saturdays, Sundays, holidays. We were there. If the bathrooms needed cleaning, we cleaned them. That was the culture we established. And right or wrong, it could not have gone outside of Memphis, because we couldn't be in Jackson, Tennessee and in Memphis. So we were in every store every day. Our office time was limited to maybe 5 hours a day. So we were interested in service, and that was it. We had done a study that to determine how price sensitive grocery shoppers were. And we found out in this sensitivity study, we started with people who were really shopped their groceries, who knew prices, or said they knew prices. And we found out that the elasticity of a price-conscious consumer was 3%. So we knew, except on ad items, we had that margin of 3%. And if we were able to take that 3% and turn it into, not pocket the money. If you're doing $50 million, 3% is a lot of money. So we reinvested that money in service. And I know that one of the things that was very important to us was that our cashiers, who were the last people who had contact with our customers, they were our special envoys. And we wanted them to call everybody by name. And even towards the later years of our business, huge number of the transactions were done electronically or by check. So if somebody hands you a check, it doesn't take a lot of sense to look at that check and say, "Miss Smith, thank you for coming in," and try to remember Miss Smith's name. Or instead of having the customer swipe their card, which happens now in the grocery stores, you swipe your own, I'd turn that thing around and have my cashier swipe it and say, "Miss Smith, thank you. Appreciate you coming in." Those are some of the things that we thought made a difference. And that 3% would disappear if you smothered your customers with that kind of interface and that kind of service. I alluded earlier to the vision statement, which I think is critical for every business. And I'm looking at Mike Matthews, and I know Mike, so I'm not picking on you, Mike, but I know you work at UBS, and I know you have a partner. UBS, I would think, has some sort of vision statement. You may or may not know it, but they got it. But why can't you and Elliot develop your own vision statement and verbalize it and put it in paper and say, this is the way we're going to treat our clients. We're going to call them and we're going to sit down with them once a quarter. And you at Paragon Bank, if you've got a manager in each of your branches, why can't that manager get up and go greet every customer that comes in that bank? You don't have that many. No bank does anymore. Everything's done electronically. And all of those little things separate you from your competition. Kroger can't do that. Walmart can't and won't do that. And what you do by having your own culture and your own vision is it separates you from everybody else, and it's something that nobody can emulate. Then once you get your vision statement and once you get your culture established, then you've got to go look for some competitive advantages. And those will be easier to come with once you're established with how you're going to run your business. We focused on our bakery products, and we focused on our prepared foods. Those were the things that separated us from everybody else because nobody else could do it. It was a slam dunk for us. We could come up with a signature item in the pie line or the cake line or the bread line, and who's going to fight us with it? We could charge anything we wanted. Hey, back in our heyday, we probably did 80% of the birthday cakes in the city of Memphis. Now, how did we do that? The culture was, we took an order on a card. The card got transmitted, we got the cake made, and one of our bakery people said, you know, we're 99% accurate. I said, no, you're not 99% accurate, because that one person who you screw their cake up with, that 1% says you're 100% inaccurate. So you can't make a mistake. And if you do, you got to have a plan in place to correct it. But back to the birthday cakes. We took the card and we filed it by month, a month ahead. The next year, in January, we called every single February birthday cake. Time for Jody's birthday. Want to make your order now? Very effective. Now, every now and then, you run across somebody that said, I'm sorry, they passed away this year. And then you have to have a plan for that. Our plan was, we're very, very sorry, and we sent a memorial to some little charity for them, and they got the acknowledgement. Little things, nothing big, nothing expensive. So my comment is to develop your style, develop your culture, involve as many of your people as you can in it, be honest, whatever else you do. We were, as an aside, back in the mid-90s, I was approached by a fundraiser from my alma mater. And at that time, we were still in business, and this guy wanted me to give him a nice chunk of money. And I went to my brother and the rest of the management guys and ladies and said, this guy wants a big chunk of money. And we decided to give it to him, to endow a chair in business ethics. This was before all the other stuff started. And it was only to be taught in the Department of Economics and in the graduate MBA program. That was our condition, that's where it was to be taught. He came back to me a month later and he said, Art, we appreciate your generosity. We're going to teach this course in our philosophy department. And I said, surely you misunderstood me. I said, it's got to be in the economics department, in the undergraduate school, and in the MBA program. Well, we can't do that. Well, we did not give them the money. And I have not given them any money since. Because they were so narrow in their thought processes that it just didn't fit with where we came from. So, in conclusion, when we built this culture, when we built this vision, when we operated it, and then it came time to sell the business. I was the fifth generation with my brother, and neither of our kids were real interested in pursuing the grocery business. So, and my brother, he had the short end of the stick. He was at the operational end, and I was more at the administrative end. So he had the 2,000 people that he was dealing with. So when we sold the business, the people who purchased us never looked at our vision statement, and they never understood our culture. And when they bought it, the sales that we were doing, which was a significant number, and the number of people, we were servicing probably 220,000 people a week. Now they weren't all different people. Some people come in 2 or 3 times a week. Their customer count dropped in half because they just let it fall. They just did not understand what drove our business. So if you are in business, and if you're going to sell it, and if you don't give a damn what happens to it, get as much money as you can for it, because 9 times out of 10, the people who buy you are not going to understand the culture. I was privileged to be on the board of Leader Federal Bank, and I don't know, most of you probably don't even remember that. They sold to union planners, and again, there was a culture lapse, and it didn't take. So if you're a buyer, beware. If you're a seller, you have to come to grips with the fact that the business is not going to be run the way you ran it, and if your people want to be outsourced, then it's your responsibility to outsource them and at least get them started in a new career, which we were able to do. So that's it. I have the vision statement. It's ours. It's not something that would apply to most of you, but if you want to take a look at it, fine. Is there any questions?
Art, you might go into a little more detail about the sale. When did it start, the negotiations? When did you make the big family decision to do it? And was it Bruno's or Albertsons?
Albertsons first. After our kids made it clear that they were really not interested in the lifestyle or the management style that we had established, and they understood that, they lived with us, and they knew how hard we worked and how important our ethics were, and we were in all of the years we were in business, we were never sued. We never had to hire a lawyer to negotiate anything. And once that happened, Jerry, my brother, we were sitting down talking, he said, Art, I am just exhausted. We've got 10 stores, and we've got 2,000 people working with us, and it's just driving me crazy. And I said to him, well, why don't we divide the 10 stores into groups of 3, and let's hire somebody to work with you and give them responsibility for 3 stores each. And you supervise him. And he said, no, that's not going to work. Why, Jerry? He said, because I'm too hands-on. I've got to be there. I've got to feel it. I've got to sense what's going on. And when that happened, he was almost in tears. And I said, look, it ain't worth this. It's just not worth it. So I contacted, and you'll know who it is, but I'm not going to name them. I contacted a group in St. Louis. There was a family-owned business that had essentially the same type of stores we did, and I thought the same culture that we had. And we went up and talked to them and said, look, we're going to sell the business, and we'd love for you guys to give us a preemptive offer, and we won't shop it. And this went on for almost a year. Gave them all kinds of numbers and let them come down and look at stores, and we never could get an offer from them. And I said at the end, because I was basically handling this with our CFO, and I went to him and I finally said, it's now or never. We had connections, as I said earlier, with the AutoZone and Malone and Hyde people, and they had used Lehman Brothers to handle their transactions, and they had agreed to work with us, even though it was such a small deal. And I told the guys in St. Louis, I said, if I don't hear from you in a week, you won't be dealing with me. You'll be dealing with Lehman Brothers. They will be the managers of the transaction, and we're going to sell it. And they still didn't give me an offer, so Lehman handled it, and then the rest is sort of history.
So Lehman handled it, went to Albertsons, and then
No.
And then
No, Lehman handled it with Bruno's,
okay.
which was KKR. KKR had purchased Bruno's in Birmingham. And when we made our decision, the Lehman Brothers guys went to KKR, and they were pretty clever about it. And they went to the St. Louis group too. And we had a little mini auction going, and the guys from KKR were going to fold us into Bruno's. Okay? And they called me. I was in our lawyer's office, and they called at 11 o'clock one morning with a preemptive offer and said, here is the offer. It was more money than we ever thought about getting. And Henry Kravis said, you got until 1 o'clock to exercise or it goes away. And I said, Henry, I'm going to lunch at 12 and you won't hear from me at 1. So, he's backed off a little bit. So we called him and accepted his bid. And they folded us in. They were going to fold us into Bruno's. And we had, with Malone and Hyde, they had lent us a bunch of money. We had a right of first refusal with them under the same terms and conditions. And at the 11th hour, they came pressing in and said, okay, we're exercising our option. So now we had two buyers. And as it turned out, the people from St. Louis had teamed up with Malone and Hyde Group, and instead of playing it straight up, they were coming in the back door. And it took us a year to get to court, but Julia Gibbons, we stipulated that her opinion and her ruling would be it. There would be no appeals. And we didn't have a horse in the race. We didn't care because we were going to get the money from either one of them. And she ruled in favor of KKR and Bruno's. So the St. Louis group and the Malone and Hyde group went away. They folded us into Bruno's, and once a week, every Tuesday, Bruno's sent their airplane up here, their jet, picked me up, took me down to Birmingham allegedly to meet with their management team. They put me in an office by myself. I sat there all day long by myself. Never did a thing. I ended up taking books with me. Flew me home in the afternoon, and that went on for a year. And then Bruno's went broke and sold it to Albertsons. And then Albertsons sold it to Schnucks. So Schnucks came in the back way. It was interesting. And of course, during the year when we were going to court, there was a clause in the purchase agreement for a material change. And if we were worried if there was a material change that we'd have no buyer. But fortunately, we operated it. We operated it hard during that period. And it also gave us a chance to outplace a lot of our key people and get them established with other careers. It's a good question.
What do you think about automated self-checkout?
Let me go back. What do you think about self-service gas?
I guess I've gotten used to it.
We saw, when I was up in Washington last week with my grandson during all this budget mess, and he's 12 years old, and he made the remark to me, he said, Pops, I don't understand why these guys can't get this thing done, but this is a 12-year-old. But we stopped at a chain called Wegmans. They operate out of Rochester, New York. And they are, without a doubt, the best of the best. I mean, it is probably 110,000 square foot grocery store. 80,000 of it is in perishables and prepared foods, and it's just a show what they've got going. They had 29 check-in stands. Every one of them were running, but no self-checkouts. I am ambivalent about it. I don't like the way they do their produce because I don't like searching for it and doing all that business. They could do that better, but it saves labor, saves time, and that's what it's all about for some of the bigger operations. We would never have done it.
Anybody else have anything else? Thank you so much, Art. This was
Well,
great.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
For the